This is Keys to the Shop, episode 103, Exploring the Colombian Coffee Connection with Ervin Liz. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DiFurio. I'm your host for the show. Really happy to have you here today. And today we get to talk with Ervin Liz, who is the founder of the Colombian Coffee Connection. We're talking all about his upbringing in a coffee farm and now his business importing that very same coffee from his neighbors on that farm and distributing it directly to customers. And it's just a great conversation and gives us a great perspective that will help us better represent coffee to our customers. And, we're going to learn a lot in this conversation, I think. So very valuable perspective and a rare one at that to have. So I look forward to sharing that conversation with you. Right now, I want to thank our sponsors at Keys to the Shop, and we're going to start with Prima Coffee. So Prima Coffee is a specialty coffee equipment supplier. They're based out of Louisville, Kentucky. And from the beginning of their company, they've set out to make the best coffee brewing equipment available to the general public and professionals alike. Their focus is on curating the best equipment for every need, from grinders to espresso machines to under-counter refrigeration. They pretty much have everything you can think of. So if you're going to be opening a shop for the first time, or you need to upgrade your equipment, or you're expanding your stores, Prima Coffee can definitely help you out because they put a big emphasis on having the expertise to help their customers get the right gear to fit every situation. So go to prima-coffee.com and see how they can help you get outfitted with the right equipment no matter what your situation. So prima-coffee.com, and I know you're going to have a great experience with them. And my thanks to Prima for their support of Keys to the Shop. I also want to thank our friends at Pacific Foods. They are the folks behind the Pacific Barista Series line of non-dairy performance beverages, and those are designed specifically for the professional barista and the standards for excellence that they demand. So whether you choose almond, soy, coconut, or rice or oat milk, its ability to take the heat from steaming and produce an unmatched silky texture and keep the flavor balance focused on coffee, that makes it a perfect choice for your cafe's menu. Now, Pacific has been a supporter of the specialty coffee community for a long time, and they demonstrate their passion for the community by listening to and serving the needs of real specialty coffee professionals. So go to pacificfoods.com, that's pacificfoods.com, and learn more about how the Barista Series line of non-dairy performance beverages can help elevate the offerings of non-dairy options in your cafe. So my thanks again to Pacific Foods for their support of Keys to the Shop. Well, today we have a treat because we're talking with someone who represents a very unique perspective in the coffee industry. We're talking with Ervin Liz, who is a son of a coffee farmer. He was born and raised on a coffee farm in Tierra Adentro, Colombia. He is a young indigenous Colombian, member of the Nassau tribe, and after completing his economics degree at Luther College in Iowa, he founded, along with John Backlund, the Colombian Coffee Connection. Now, his company focuses on importing green coffee directly from his former neighbors in Colombia. So they are importing, roasting, and distributing this coffee directly to the consumers. It's an amazing model. So as the founder of the Colombian Coffee Connection and a member of the Nassau tribe, Ervin is committed to paying the farmers what is fair for their product, while also delivering to his customers one of the best single-source coffees in the world. Their team at the Colombian Coffee Connection personally travels to Colombia, visiting each farm and cupping each product to ensure the acquisition of only the highest quality coffee. In addition to all this, the Colombian Coffee Connection has a humanitarian initiative called Coffee with Heart, and they give 10% of all profits back to the people in Colombia. And in today's discussion, we get to talk with Ervin about coming up in the coffee farm, going off to school, and then getting back into coffee to represent his neighbors to take this coffee, this wonderful specialty product, and deliver it direct to the consumer, trying to basically cut out as many middlemen as possible to deliver the highest return for their hard work on the farm. Now, we also talk about Ervin's perspective on the impact and effectiveness of certifications on farmers. We discuss the increasing trend of internal consumption at origin of that origin's coffee. So in Colombia, more Colombians are paying higher prices for Colombian coffee and not just exporting that coffee. And Ervin is really thrilled about that. We discuss that a little bit. And then we discuss also what Ervin feels like we should do as coffee retailers to really bridge the gap between the two chains, the two links in the supply chain, and really make a connection and represent the coffee well to our customers and do good by the farmer at the same time. So there's a lot in this discussion. It's definitely an inspirational one and unique in the fact that we're talking with somebody who has been a part of pretty much every link in the value chain in specialty coffee. So I'm thrilled to have gotten a chance to meet and talk with Ervin, have him on the show, and I hope you feel the same way and are just as inspired by what he's doing with the Colombian Coffee Connection as I am. So let's get right to our conversation now with Ervin Liz, the founder of the Colombian Coffee Connection. Okay, Ervin, hello. Welcome to Keys to the Shop. Glad to have you on.
Good morning, Chris. Thank you for having me here. Like I said a moment ago, I'm absolutely excited to be here, and it is an honor to be here in your show. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, Chris and I met at the Coffee Fest in Denver, and now we're here talking about coffee. So thank you for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. It was great to get to meet you, and what a great opportunity to just continue the conversation here on the show that we're having on the show floor in Denver. You represent your company, the Colombian Coffee Connection, and you were telling me about this. It's really fascinating, your story and how you got into the world of coffee, or I'd say really how you were kind of born into the world of coffee. Just describe to us your beginnings in coffee, because it's really a great story.
Yes, that's right. So I will say that there is two stories. There is the story of my childhood, and there is the story of me getting into coffee a little bit more professional, at a more professional level. Let's put it that way. And so just to start, I grew up in a coffee farm in Colombia. That will be the first story. I was born in a coffee farm in Colombia. I am from an indigenous community. The tribe is called the NASA people, just like the NASA, like this, the space station. That thing. and that is the name of my tribe. And so my family, my parents, they pretty much farm coffee throughout their entire lives. So I was born when they were already producing coffee, and they don't produce coffee anymore nowadays. They still do a little bit, but not at any level like they were doing it before. So I can't say that they are coffee farmers. Anyways, so I consider myself a coffee farmer because when you are born in a coffee farm in Colombia, basically all you do is you are involved in every aspect of coffee producing. So, I can say that I used to be weeding the coffee. I used to be picking the coffee. I used to be pulping the coffee. I will help my dad drying the coffee, screening it, and ultimately selling it at the co-ops. So in every step, I was involved at a very personal and deep level. In that, again, I was there physically doing everything that has to do with coffee. So that is a little bit of the first story. And the second story is when I actually got into coffee. I moved here to the U.S. In 2012, and I was going to college. And finally, in 2017, I graduated. And like I say, I have had this experience in a coffee farm in Colombia growing up. And the idea that I had was to bring that experience and to do it at a more professional level by selling the coffee that the farmers, the neighbors that I grew up with produce. And so at that point, I have been friends with a business owner. His name is John Buckland, and so he's now my business partner. But we had known each other for about 40 years at that point. And so I put a business plan together, and I told him that I explained to him again that I had been born in a coffee farm in Colombia. I had this experience, this knowledge, and that I wanted to do coffee in America again at a professional level and just become an importer, roast the coffee and sell it. And so that will be again the second story, which is I got into that more specific area of coffee last year. So it's been about a year since I became a coffee importer here in the U.S. and also a coffee roaster. And so that's a little bit of the second story there for me in terms of coffee.
So as you decided to enter back into the world of coffee and form the Colombian Coffee Connection, what did you have in mind besides importing coffee? Obviously you wanted to import coffee. What is the goal? What is the formation of the company itself? What was behind it and your vision for the company?
Right. So growing up again in a coffee farm in Colombia, I got to see, everything that has to do with coffee at the origin level. So one of the things that my dad always complained about was price, because pretty much all the coffee that gets traded at origin, it goes to co-ops. And the co-ops, they usually buy at the price that the commodity exchange in New York decides. So that changes every time, pretty much every single day it changes. And so one of the things that will always complain was, why does the price always keeps changing? Why can't it be the same every market day, which in the area where I live is on Saturday. So every Saturday we will go to sell the coffee, and sometimes it will be a little bit more, sometimes it will be a little bit less. And so the goal that I had in mind was, how can we connect the consumer directly the consumer to the producer. And in coffee there is a lot of intermediaries. So there is first there is actually first the people that buy the coffee in the countryside. That used to be my father, and then they in turn sell it to the co-ops. The co-ops in turn sell it to a broker at the ports, and the people at the ports in turn sell it to somebody who is buying it here in the U.S. That will be any big name, any of the big names, coffee importers. So there is about 3 or 4 intermediaries before it makes it to the coffee shop, and then the coffee shop is in turn another intermediary, which in turn sells to the customer. So there is actually about 4 or 5 intermediaries, and according to research, only about 1% of the profits from all the coffee trade goes back to the farmers. And so I saw that, and again, this is a research that I found in the New York Times, and many people talk about that as well. And so I was thinking, just thinking for myself, how can we bridge, how can we become a bridge and just connect again the consumer directly to the producer? And so that was what I had in mind. That was the goal. And so today the goal still continues to be the same. The company is focused on bringing the coffee directly from the farmer to the consumer. So I am the exporter in Colombia. I have my exporter license. In here, the Colombian Coffee Connection receives the coffee. So we're the importers here as well. And then I am also the roaster. So I roast the coffee and then I ship it, sell it directly to the consumer. And that is basically the goal. And so by doing that, again, we can avoid intermediaries. We can pay the farmers. At the moment, we're paying them 3 times more. And we also have a certain level of profits. So because of that, we can then do another thing, which is something very important for us, which is our humanitarian side. We give 10% of the profits back to the community. So those things can be done because we are, again, avoiding all those intermediaries and bringing the coffee directly to the consumers.
Wow. So that charitable work, that's a personal thing for you especially, isn't it?
That's right. Yes, it is a very personal thing for me because, like I've been saying all this time, I grew up in Colombia, grew up in a farm, and I have many neighbors still that are living in very poor conditions. They, especially the elders, we're focused on the elders primarily. And last time, for example, we helped this elder. Her name is Celia Muse, and she basically doesn't have children. She doesn't have anyone. She does have some far relatives, but nobody really cares. And she was living under a roof that was shattered. And when it rained, the water was falling on her, and she was sleeping literally on the mud floor. And one of the things that we managed to do was to help her building a new little hut. Is nothing special, but it is a hut, and she now has a bed. She now has blankets and all these kind of things. So now she's sheltered from the elements. And that was the first project that we did. The second project is building a home for two elders whose children abandoned them, and one of the children took away the only home that they had, and so they basically became homeless. And so now we were able to fundraise, but also use that 10% of the profits to help them building a new home. So the home is right now getting built as we speak. And again, those are the things that we're doing. And so, yes, this is very personal. The last two elders that we're helping, they are neighbors. They literally live about 50 feet away from where I used to live. And so, yes, it is very personal. And I think all the people that have had the coffee, they also feel very connected to these projects because they know it is true. I'm not just a guy who went to Colombia, who saw the farms and saw the need. I am somebody who grew up seeing the need, and now I am here, just trying to put my little grain of sand in the bucket and just hopefully making a difference.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, we talk about direct trade and relationship coffees a lot as sort of buzzwords, but the kind of knowledge that you have of what goes on there and who it is that you're serving and representing, it's just unparalleled.
Exactly. And this is something that it's probably one of the unique value propositions, I will say, in terms of our business, because I don't personally know anybody else who is, well, first of all, native, who grew up in a coffee farm up there in the mountains, who is now in America and is doing all the process from importing to roasting to shipping directly to the customers. I don't personally know anyone. If there is somebody else around the country and is listening to this podcast, they can comment below and say that they are in there. But as of now, I don't really know absolutely anybody who has all of these little aspects and who is doing what we're doing, what I am doing.
Mm-hmm. So as you started this company and you're entering into this space, you're just graduated from college. Was it pretty difficult to enter into this space and sort of get your feet underneath you as an exporter and importer?
Yes, it's been a difficult thing for many reasons. The operational part of it is easy. It's not too complicated. The license in Colombia, it did take a lot of time to get it, but it wasn't anything that is difficult to just do. It was more of a waiting kind of game. But selling the coffee and letting people know the story and getting them to understand why we're doing what we're doing, I think that's been the most difficult part as of now. We're also selling the coffee at a premium price. It is a specialty coffee, so it is not just any coffee. And like I said, we pay the farmers 3 times more, and we also have the humanitarian side. So for that reason, we sell the coffee at a higher price than what most people are used to. So the pound goes for $42. Most people are used to a pound of coffee for $15, $14, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so the coffee has a higher price, and so the people who buy the coffee nowadays, for example, are people who really care for the cause, who really understands the cause, and who likes very, very good coffee. So those are the two things that our customers have is again, they are charitable people. They care for others. They care for the cause, and they understand quality coffee. And finding that kind of people is rather difficult. Most people like coffee, they like good coffee, but they don't want to pay a lot for it. So there is that kind of people. And again, so just finding those customers, we are not paying, we're not putting any money into advertising. So everything that we're doing is basically word of mouth. I go talk to people and just building that relationship with them, letting them know the quality, let them know the cost. It takes time. And so it has been difficult at that level. Every other aspect, from roasting to importing to talking with the farmers to shipping the coffee, all that kind of things, all those little operational details. Those are rather easy, I will say, at least until now. I'm not quite sure later when we have a higher volume, but as of now, it's been absolutely fine in that regard.
Excellent. I mean, the relationship between connecting retail and the farm. There's this in specialty. We like to believe that we're learners and we like to explore certain origins, but we can't help but have our preconceptions about coffees. And we also can get stuck in our ways and how we represent particular origins on the shelf. I wonder, what has been your experience in interacting with, I would imagine, a lot more retailers now that you've started this business, and their perceptions about what you're doing, but also what sticks out to you the most about the way specialty retailers are representing the type of coffee that you grew up growing?
Right. So we don't actually sell to other businesses. We sell it directly to the customers. But one of the things that I could say with regards to that question is, we are learners in the specialty industry. We're learners. Probably one of the biggest things is what you say. There is a lot of preconceptions. There is, many people, they just think they know, for example, things about the origin, things about quality. But coffee is also one thing that is a little bit subjective. So even the capping process, as you already know, there is one of the aspects in the scoring sheet is your personal opinion, that kind of thing. And so it can get a little bit tricky to just define sometimes quality, or sometimes people will just use things like labels to sell more coffee. And those labels don't truly represent what they say they do. I'm talking about things like fair trade, things like rainforest, all these kind of things. They are systems that are supposed to help farmers in a way, but they don't actually do. And I say this again from a very personal level, because Dad used to work and produce coffee that was supposed to go for these labels, but there was never really a difference in price. That never really happened. And so the farmers are usually quite annoyed when they hear these names. And so again, I think sometimes, or in most cases, coffee retailers don't really represent true quality coffee, or a cause that is actually true, that is making an actual difference with the farmers. And again, many farmers are not very happy with labels, especially labels, because most retailers use it as a propaganda device just to sell more coffee. And for our company, for example, we are not associated with any particular label. We don't have any type of certifications. The coffee is grown organic, but we, as of now, we don't have any type of certification. And I think we want to keep it that way, because in a way, we believe that when we build that relationship with the people and they get to trust us, we don't really need to have a label, and we are doing it from a very honest point of, from a very honest standing. And I think when people know that, understand that, and we are actually doing that, that's the best way to go about, rather than just having a label to say, yes, this is what we are doing.
That's really powerful, because as you're saying this, I'm thinking, part of the reason that we have labels, or the reason why partially we trust in labels, is because it allows us to not have to think as much about what we're selling, that we can trust in the label itself. And I suppose there are limits to how many different types of relationships, like if you have 10 different origins on your shelf, like is it feasible for you as an owner to have relationships with all these people? Or, I mean, of course, we're talking about the importer having relationships with them themselves, but it is tricky, because in a way we're taught to trust in the label and don't think about it, just trust it.
Right. And you have said it right. I think that's one of the hardest things to do, and I am personally already feeling it, because even though I'm not working with an awful lot of producers, there are hundreds of people who have contacted me directly, and they want me to help them selling the coffee. That's one of the things that has happened. And so I just can't help by thinking, importers that have 4 million pounds of coffee in their shelves, in their warehouses. It is definitely a hard thing, I will say, at that level, to keep that sort of relationships. And so what I think is there is a space for every type of coffee importer. And I think there is also a smaller space for people who are doing like what we are doing. I don't think we're going to get to the point where everybody can know where their coffee is coming from. There is all sorts of qualities of coffee. But I think over time, perhaps more people will start doing what we're doing, which is going directly to the farmer, bringing the coffee and selling it directly to the customer. I think that's going to happen, but you are quite right. It's going to be a rather difficult thing to keep those close relationships with as many farmers as there are. And with regards to the labeling, it's in a way not the fault of the customer to just trust it. I think there is a lot more power behind those labels. People who have a lot of power, who want to control, in a way, perhaps the coffee trade, and there isn't anything you can do about it as a small coffee importer. But I think everything in a way might work to the better of coffee farmers, perhaps at some level, because I don't think these labels are bad for everyone. I think they are certainly doing something in some place at some level. It might not be helping every single farmer. Like I said a moment ago, in the case of my father, he never saw any difference. But I think it is helping in some place at some point, in some place in the world. I don't know where that will be, but I think it does maybe help a little bit, at least.
One of the things that you and I chatted about in Denver, I think, was something that I imagine might also help the situation, and that is across lots of different producing regions, there's a upward trend of retail shops and internal consumption of the high-end coffee that is produced in the country, not just the leftovers. And you in our conversation confirmed that this was true also in Colombia. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you've seen in terms of how people are starting to or have been increasingly consuming their own product in the country, and kind of keeping that economic advantage at home.
That's right. So I think Bogota, the capital city of Colombia, is a good example for that. I went to Colombia last May, And one of the things that I did was to go to a couple of coffee shops, and the coffee quality is quite good. People are indeed looking at getting the good stuff that usually gets exported. So one of the things that I'm doing now as well is with my family, we're also selling coffee, specialty coffee in Bogota. We also sell it directly to the customers, exactly the same thing that I'm doing here in the US. And people understand and see the value of not only the quality but also the purpose behind it, again, because we're doing exactly the same thing, bringing it directly from the farmer and selling it directly to them. That's one of the things that we're doing, and people are willing to pay also a higher price. When I was in Bogota, I saw that some of the coffee was getting sold for about $18-19 per pound, which in Colombia we have the peso, and $19 for coffee in Colombia, for 1 pound of coffee in Colombia, is quite expensive. It will be like saying a pound of coffee in the US for $80. If we were to compare it relatively, that's how much it would be.
Wow.
But there was a lot of people buying that kind of coffee, and I was like, wow, this is amazing, because that just demonstrates that people want the good coffee. Like you have said, historically most of the coffees were exported, but now people are getting back to they want the good quality for themselves. And one of the slogans that we have for the coffee down there in Colombia is coffee produced in Colombia for Colombia, and that really resonates a lot with the customers that we have right now. And so that business down in Colombia is separate from the business that we have here in the US. That's more of with my family, and it's been doing very well so far. In fact, it's actually taken off much faster than it did here in the US, which is kind of funny, because who would have thought that the people in Colombia who have lived around coffee forever, will be the ones more eager to buy the coffee than the people here in the US who just get the coffee here in their cups or in a bag. And they don't have that chance to go to the farms and see the coffee plants, see the farmers, all that kind of thing. And yeah, I thought it was kind of an interesting thing that happened there. But yes, people are a lot more willing to buy the good quality coffee nowadays than it was the case before.
That's excellent. It's really exciting to see that happening, and I'm thinking about how here in my hometown and in any hometown that has a retail store that sells coffee or roasts coffee, the public gets educated about particular origins and levels of quality that exist in coffee, and it has a ability to drive demand in lots of different ways. So we have in stores a real responsibility to accurately represent quality and do our part to help drive demand with how we relate to customers, the story of the coffee we're carrying, which leads me to ask, what is it that you wish after a year of doing this and a lifetime involved in coffee in Colombia, what is it that you would wish for those of us who work in stores or own businesses selling coffee to the public, that we would know about Colombian coffee, and what do you wish that we would adopt as a practice as we represent the origin to the customers?
Right, that's a really good question, and I think one of the things that can be done is just to seek to understand the producers better. There are a lot of needs. There is a lot of concerns that I think coffee producers have that as of now have not been met by the importers. And I think this might not change everything in the industry, but I think visiting the farmers at least once is a way to honor them, and it's a way to give back to them, because most of these people, they have zero idea what happens after the coffee gets sold at their local co-ops. They know nothing after that. They just know that they have to produce the coffee, and that's it. And so I think seeking to understand, again, their needs, their wants, it's a good way to then bring that knowledge to the coffee shop and transfer it to the customers. I think that's a very powerful thing that coffee shop owners could do. That's one thing that I do as well for my business. I try to communicate to the best of my ability how the farmers think, what are their needs, what are the things that they want to know and they want to learn, because there is also this thing that most coffee farmers, they don't really, in most cases, understand what they are doing. Some of them know what they are doing, but some of them are just like producing coffee. Nowadays, things are changing because there is a lot more demand for quality. But before, the farmer will just plant the coffee, put it in the ground, pick it, wash it, dry it, and that's it. There wasn't any type of experimentation. But today, people, quite a few people, they say, okay, we need to dry it in a space that is completely clean, that doesn't have any other maybe I don't know, things like like dogs will walk on the coffee, or like the chickens will walk on the coffee, that kind of thing. And so today they are a lot more conscious about doing this kind of process at a more professional level. And I think part of that has been because people from here, from the U.S. or from other countries, go back to these communities and they say, maybe if you do this thing, if you do this other thing, that's going to improve the quality, and then you're going to be able to you're going to be paid more for your product. And that has worked, again, at some level. Not everybody is there yet, but I think going to the farmers, explaining these kind of things, and then in turn bringing their knowledge back to the shops, that will make a huge difference for sure in terms of increasing demand, but also just honoring the farmer and representing what they are doing. So that will be the one of the things. But the other thing is, I don't know, this is probably an idea that is a little too personal, but one of the things that we wanted to do was to bring maybe a farmer over to the US. That's one of the projects that we have in mind. And this will be a little bit of a challenge because of the language barrier. But I think maybe doing something like that to just show the people, how things are being done over here, and why the quality is important. Why we demand that the coffee be dried at a certain level. Why we ask that the coffee not have foreign smells. Why we want that the coffee be picked at a certain level of ripeness instead of less ripe. That kind of thing, or why it is so important that the coffee gets produced in a way that is friendly with other things, like like birds, like the nature, like shade, like all these kind of things. And I think that will be more of a learning process from both sides. So I think doing that will definitely be one thing that we could all do, especially shop and roast owners, and that will be the best way to truly represent what the coffee is and where it comes from.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like we can bring a lot more value to this by increasing the relationship, or increasing the communication between us and the producer, and building that relationship even in person. A lot of people might think that that's pretty unattainable to be able to, depending on where they are in their business, if they can go down to origin, or they might be even scared to go down to origin because they don't want to impose on people, or they don't see the value of it necessarily. But what you're saying is especially from your perspective and having an intimate knowledge of it, you're saying that it would be welcomed.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I have seen that, like I said, in my own business, people do see that and they get super excited. But also with the farmers in Colombia, last time, like I said, I went to visit them and they were extremely happy that I was there because it just shows them that we care, that we are not just there just to get a coffee. We're there to build that relationship. And, just also taking advantage of that and taking pictures, taking videos and showing the people what is being done, not just talking about it, but also showing. I think that's quite powerful. And again, that will be for. I don't think this is applicable for everyone because, like I said earlier, there is all sorts of qualities of coffee, and there is relationship coffees, and I think that kind of coffee is cool. Increase demand by doing this type of activities.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that is amazing. I really think that you're right. Like, that isolation must be just such a depressing thing because there's this robust community of specialty coffee. We have competitions, we have these beautiful spaces, and then it all gets quiet the farther back down the chain you go, and there's no communication. There's no it just is silent. So I can see where that would be just a real invigorating occurrence to have somebody down there connecting, just putting a face to the name or the dollar sign or whatever it is. So what can we do to learn more about what you do with the Colombian Coffee Connection, and how can we stay in touch with you and buy your coffee?
Yeah, so we do have a website. That's how I sell the coffee. The website is colombiancoffeeconnection.com. I do have a blog in there as well. So in there, I write about different things. One of the latest blogs that I wrote was my experience growing up in a coffee farm. I think in there I describe better my experience than I did here talking to you. And so that's a good way to learn about the company and also about my story, about the story of the people back in Colombia. But then, of course, there is this podcast. And so people who are listening to this, thank you for listening. Again, you can go to the blog. We also have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. On Facebook, you can find us as Colombian Coffee Connection, and as well on Instagram, Colombian Coffee Connection, the same thing. It's very easy to find. If you look for that name, it will be the first search result that you find.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This was really educational and a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time. Really glad to have met you and gotten you on the show. So thank you very much, Ervin.
Thank you very much, Chris. Have a nice day.
Well, like I said in the beginning of this episode, I'm just grateful to have gotten the opportunity to meet Ervin. Grateful that he was able to come and share his story and perspectives with us on the show. Thank you, Ervin, for your time. Now, I want to make you all aware of a very generous offer that Ervin has extended to all of the Keys to the Shop listening audience. If you go to the ColombianCoffeeConnection.com, and we've linked to that in the description of this show, you can get 5% off your entire purchase if you use the coupon code KEYS. That's KEYS. It's not case sensitive. So you can do all caps, you can do no caps, doesn't matter. Just KEYS, KEYS. And that'll give you 5% off your entire purchase. On top of that, Ervin is pledged to give $5 for every 1 pound of coffee sold to their humanitarian project, Coffee with Heart. So that money will be going directly to the farmers, and that is a really great opportunity. So go to the ColombianCoffeeConnection.com and use the coupon code KEYS. Now, I want to say about this episode, I really love how Ervin really made this a personal thing at the end when we're asking about how we as retailers can make an impact. His suggestion is basically that we can go to the farm and meet the farmers and visit the farm, or you can bring the farm to you. You can bring a farmer to where you are, and how valuable that connection actually is. And, it hit me in this conversation, and I think I mentioned it while talking with him. We are so lucky and blessed, really, to have such a great community of, coffee professionals around us all the time. And that's not so true for the coffee farmers. There's a lot of isolation. And just like Ervin said in this conversation, they grow the coffee and they send it out, and that's the last they hear of it. There's no communication oftentimes back to them. So think about how invigorating and inspiring it can be to somebody to have that kind of connection and relationship. Of course, if you can't make it to Origin and you can't bring a farmer to your cafe, I think just getting into the mindset that we can become better at learning about origins. We can become better about trying at least to make more connections between what we do in the shop and how it has an effect on the farmer. And we can bring our communities together more. We can demand more transparency from our importers and the people who run the programs that, give us our certifications and things like that. We have a voice. We can use it on behalf of the farmers. That's at least something that we can do. So kind of taking a personal challenge to be always learning and challenging our own assumptions about an origin, and then reaching out to the people who have the connections in the country and have the means to move the needle more than we do in our current positions, and asking them more questions and seeing, what is it that we can do to pay more for coffee, to see that more of this money goes back to Origin, to create a more sustainable and connected coffee supply chain, just like Ervin is doing with his former neighbors in Colombia. He's making that Colombian Coffee Connection. And I definitely think that as an overarching message of this conversation, relationship coffee, every coffee is relationship coffee. The difference is whether or not it's a healthy relationship. And I think that's where we all want to be. And in this conversation, Ervin has really helped us along to that end. So again, thank you very much to Ervin Liz for joining us on the show and helping us get inspired and move in that direction. So if you want the show notes for this episode, you can go to keystotheshop.com and you can enter your email address on the sidebar to sign up for the newsletter. So the show notes will be delivered automatically to your inbox. And the show notes are basically the main points and takeaways of each episode, as well as the links that are mentioned in that episode, information on where to find the guests and their companies, their social media handles, things like that, all kind of conveniently in a PDF format. So definitely go and sign up for that. There's also some curated links that I come across during the week that I include in these newsletters that will help you in your professional journey, things that I think are pretty interesting and useful to read or watch. So go do that, keystotheshop.com. Now, if you want to reach out to me directly, you can email chris@keystotheshop.com, CHRIS@keystotheshop.com for any questions, feedback, comments, things like that. I would love to hear from you. I would also love to see you if you are going to be in the LA area. Coffee Fest is coming up 19th through the 21st of August. And I will be there judging latte art, giving a few classes. And I think it's worth your time because Coffee Fest is pretty much the best trade show you can go to if you are a coffee retailer or if you are going to be a coffee retailer. They have a ton of great classes and seminars. Everything is very accessible, and it's a great trade show floor. And, I've been going to Coffee Fest in a professional capacity for almost 15 years now. And this year is just electric. It's a really great environment. And this time around in LA, The show is being hosted in conjunction with the Western Food Service and Hospitality Show, and your badge that you buy to get into Coffee Fest is good for that show as well, so that's pretty cool. So if you want 50% off your admission, you can go to Keys to the Shop on Instagram, and I've posted the coupon there. So you go to our Instagram account, make sure you follow us, and use that code when you go to Coffee Fest to register, and you'll get 50% off. So thank you, Coffee Fest, for that, and I hope to see you all there. So that's it for today's show. I hope to see you here next week, and as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.